wing. It was a blaze. The fuel tanks were on fire. So then I got out at the seat and turned the bailout bell. I wanted to get all the crew out. And I was doing that. I turned the bailout bell out. The top turret gunner bailed out. And then I looked from the back of the airplane. We had 4 people back there. And I was looking out the bomb bay. We had the bomb bay doors open. And in the back, I could see my radio operator was standing at the doorway looking out and panic-stricken. And I kept motioning him to go because he was there, the ball turret gunner was in there, the waist gunner and the tail gunner and me were still in the airplane. It blew up. And the next thing I knew, I'm floating through the air with bits of burning airplane falling all around me.
Wow.
And we were 29,000 feet when this occurred. And in our training, we were told, if you bail out at altitude, do not open your parachute till you get close to the ground because, number one, you don't have any oxygen with your parachute, so you have to wait to get down close. And number two, the German fighters would shoot at people in parachutes. So I remembered that. So I'm floating down through the air, and I landed in a village, a backyard of a small village, and I could hear the people around the houses mumbling, talking. And I got out of my boots and my parachute and I leaped over a fence, ran across a field into a woods. And I evaded for about 10 hours until they finally, a bunch of farmers came in and with a dog and caught me. And then took me to a fire station where they strung me up. They're going to hang me. I had my hands tied behind my back, strung up. And all these civilians were very angry and they were all fighting about whether they're going to hang me right away or not. And about this time, some German soldiers from a nearby flak battery heard that the civilians had a prisoner, and they wanted prisoners. They dispersed the civilians, cut me down, and took me off to an airdrome, put me in a jail there. And that was the start of my previous, what they call a processing, until they sent me to a prison camp, Stalag Luft 3. So I was cleared. My co-pilot, who had bailed out first without being asked, was shot in his parachute. He was killed before he hit the ground. My bombardier and navigator parachuted. And the bombardier got in the hands of these farmers. They broke both his legs by beating him with hoe handles. And so he was wounded. And my co-pilot, I think I told you the story, my navigator then ended up right in the middle of Hamburg during the air raid, and they took him to an air raid shelter. And he ended up as a prisoner of war. And in the same PW camp I was in, and I'm still in contact with him. He's now a lawyer, has a law firm in Chicago. So we flew together. It's only one time he flew with me because we needed a specialized navigator because I was flying deputy lead. And we were very close to each other and attend all these POW meetings and so on. So that was the story of my last flight.
That's incredible. Now, you were in Stalag Luft 3, which was in Sagan, Germany.
Sagan, Germany. It had the benefits of being, it was run by the German Air Force, and it was for airmen only, pilots and navigators, and the GIs, enlisted men, go to different camps. But Stalag Luft 3 was sort of one of the star camps for Allied aviators.
Mm-hmm.
And we had English, mostly English, Americans, French, and we had one Navy pilot in there.
Who let him in?
So we said to him, "How'd you get shot down?" He said, "I didn't get shot down. Where were you captured?" "In the Gulf of Mexico." He was flying out of Pensacola over the water, and his engine quit, and he ditched in the Gulf of Mexico, and he got out of his airplane, was in his life jacket, and a submarine surfaced. It was a German submarine. They picked him up, put him in a submarine, and took him back to Germany.
Now that is bad luck. I'm sorry, there's just no other way to put it. I mean, to ditch your plane in American waters and be taken all the way to Germany. I mean, this guy must have spent a lot of time looking at the sky saying, okay, why me?
Yeah.
Now, at Stalag Luft 3, that you were there just to,
Stalag Luft 3
May of '44, right?
Oh, I was there in June of '44, okay. June 18th of '44, until January of '45, when he marched us all out of there because the Russians were coming close. So they got 10,000 of us, I think, in there.
The reason I mentioned Stalag Luft 3 is this is where the famous Great Escape took place.
That's right. The 3 tunnels were being dug there. That's correct.
Right.
And
so must have been a lot of talk about.
I got there months after that occurred, and after that, they had shot the 50 escaping prisoners, which is considered a war crime because under the Geneva Convention, prisoners who tried to escape were not to be executed. They were to be put in solitary confinement or something. Right. So it was right after that, and the Germans had all sorts of notices hung up saying, "Escape is no game. This is what might happen to you." They had these posters all over the place. When I got there, I said, "What's this all about?" So they told us what had happened. Yeah.
Wow. Do you have anything you want to make sure gets said about your time in combat during the war? Is there something you want to make sure you have a chance to say to today's generation about those days?
Well, in those days, the war was not as unpleasant as Vietnam was and things of today. And it was considered, well, most people said, a patriotic duty and also something to do. I was 18 years old. I went in the Air Force, and I always wanted a career as an airman. I joined the aviation cadets, and I wanted to be in the air. So at that time, it was the thing to do. It wasn't something that you try to avoid. And all I have to say is anyone today has got to consider themselves what they can do for their country. And if it's called upon to go to war, so be it. But we hope that the government works in such a way as to keep us out of wars. But if we get into a war, we're ready to go.
Did you know that these planes were going to be here today?
I did, yes. Yes.
And what did it feel like to be around such venerable example?
It's incredible. I mean, you know, really you only see these aircraft in museums, so to actually see them out flying with the crews, and it's pretty amazing.
So you're essentially the newest generation of what gentlemen like Ed and his ilk were doing almost 70 years ago. You were talking with Ed a few minutes ago.
Yes.
Do you feel a kinship?
Oh yeah.
With an aviator like him?
Definitely.
Anybody
it's a
wears
little surreal.
pilot wings.
Yes. Yes. I can only imagine what it was like for him back then. Very different than today.
How old are you when you started flying?
When I started flying, I was about probably 24 years old, and I'm currently 30.
Well, you didn't have to say that. You know, it's public record now.
She's not ashamed of it.
No.
Go ahead. How many women crewmen did you have during the war?
None.
Kind of what I thought.
They stayed home and made the airplanes and posed for pretty pictures on the nose.
Yeah, okay, well that's a good point. Many of the planes did have at least one beautiful woman on it. But of course, the women's air service pilots who got these planes across the Atlantic served an incredible service to all of us, to getting them over there so the men could fly them. But now you're much more actively involved in the real thing.
Well, I think, you know, thanks to those women, we've made many steps to allowing women to participate, you know, in the military the way that these gentlemen did.
Well, I must tell you though, Kristen, that whenever there's a B-17 in San Diego, I come out and look at it.
You do? That's great.
It's I think, probably my favorite airplane. I did come back from World War II. I was a prisoner of war for 16 months. Came back from there and was going to stay in, but then they had a big reduction in force after the truce was signed in Japan. So I went to school on the GI Bill and flew in the reserves. Got recalled from Korea the day I graduated from college. And flew C-46s, C-119s from Japan into Korea. I came back from there and tried to get with the airlines in 1946 when I first came back. But they had a whole bunch of people who had finished their 25 or 35 missions and were already with the airlines, so they were not hiring. They didn't hire again until the 50s. But in 55, I got hired with American and worked the way up from Convair 240, DC-4, DC-6, DC-7. Then went to the Lockheed Electra 707, then upgraded to captain on the Electra, and then the 727, Mach 111, 707, DC-10, 747.
Quite
and
an
I finally
impressive resume.
retired with about 24,000 hours of flying time.
Wow.
But that 16 months that I sat in prison camp not flying really cost me. But I'm still alive, and so many of the guys, half my crew died that day, so I feel I'm quite lucky.
Yes.
Yeah, well, we're glad you're here. But I recall when I did ask you that question once, what was your favorite plane to fly? And you said the 17 and the 707.
Right.
Yeah, both Boeing products. Of
Right.
course.
If it ain't Boeing, I ain't going.
Well, there's an advertisement plug if I ever heard one. Have you been through the aircraft yet?
I have not, no.
Are you hoping
No.
to crawl through her?
Definitely, yes.
Okay, well, you
Yes.
seem to be about the right builds. I don't think you're
Yes.
going to have
I'll
any
come
trouble.
little.
A big guy like me, forget it. You know, that they need at least two shoehorns and about a pound of lard to make it work. So, anyway, did you have anything do you want to say about this weekend big celebration?
No,
Anything
it'll
that-
just be, it's a once in a lifetime opportunity to actually be here and experience it in person. So I'm very excited, and I know everybody else is excited, so it'll be a good time.
It's going to be quite an event. Well, thank
Definitely.
you very much for talking with us.
Thank you.
Great
Thank you
to
so
talk
much
to
for having me.